Kalalayim, La Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahweh Shai Ba'Hashem Rakha HaKodash. Double honors unto the apostles of GMS who rule well, who I learned this truth from, and salutations and blessings unto you elect, Akim and few Aquathim that take heed, that's brothers and sisters. Alright, this lesson is, well, I'm going to start off with this scripture actually, but it's dealing with the people called the Sac or the Sacae, which later became, I believe, Scythians, but nonetheless, I'm going to start off with Deuteronomy 30:1. And it shall come to pass when all these things are upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which we went through we originally received blessings, right? We received the fruit of the land, we were safe. It's when we went off, we received the curse, and we've been pretty much under the curses up until now, right? And the curses right now are lifting off, which I have said before thee. And thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord Yahweh thy power hath driven thee. And that's why I say we're at the end of the curses, because this time and period right now is the time where really all Israelites are truly scattered throughout the four corners. I did a previous lesson where the lesson was titled "There were many diasporas," which there were. There was the diaspora from the time of the Assyrian captivity. There was the diaspora from the time of the Babylonian captivity, and then you had the Persians and the Medes, and then you had the Greek diasporas, Roman diaspora, and so on and so forth. But all that accumulating to the point we're at now, which is Israelites in Siberia, in Polynesian islands, Australia, everywhere, right? And we are calling to mind all these curses, right? Verse 2, and thou shalt return unto the Lord Yahweh thy power, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children with all thine heart and with all thy soul. Then the Lord Yahweh thy power will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord Yahweh thy power hath scattered thee. Right? So what does that tell you? Israelites are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. So when people think, oh, how are these guys saying the Vikings and the Normans and the Varangians and all these different people were Israelites, or the Israelites in India, the untouchables and other labels that they have on them, right? How are those guys Israelites, right? But they fail to understand biblical prophecy and history. Let's go to 2 Ezra 2. I'm going to go straight to the point, actually, verse 6. This is referring to Israel. Let's start at 5. As for me, O Father, I call upon thee for a witness over the mother of these children, which would not keep my covenant, that thou bring them to confusion, and their mother to a spoil, that there may be no offspring of them. Verse 7, let them be scattered abroad among the heathen. Let their names be put out of the earth, for they have despised my covenant. What does that mean? Did the Most High destroy Israel? No. That's what people like to believe. These heathens, right? Like Vocab and all these other demons. Oh, we're the new Israel. Some people say Israel's done away with, right? You can read Romans 9. Read the whole chapter, man, from verse 1, right? But this is the point. Let them be scattered abroad among the heathen, So let's get into the lesson without further ado. I have a few pages here. So this is from hopeofisrael.org. And again, as a disclaimer, as always, I'm going to bring forth the truth to the Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai B'Hashem Rakha HaKodash. A lot of these Edomites, right, they like to claim that they're Israelites because they have the records of Israel becoming the Scythians or the Anglo-Saxons or whatever other name they became, they label themselves. And now that Esau's in that land today, they took over, right? During the time of the Renaissance, they say, oh no, we're the ancient British. We're the ancient Saxons and the Germanians and on forth and so on, right? So you have to keep that in mind from that perspective. Brothers don't get confused. So let me skip down. I'm going to start here. The I has been dropped. It is quite common in some languages to drop the initial syllable from a word. Dr. Schrader points out that the Assyrians dropped the I when they spoke of an Israelite. Also, it was quite common to sometimes add a new final syllable to a name. Ahab is called by Shalmaneser II Ahabu Sirle, example Ahab of Israel, in an inscription discovered on the banks of the Tigris, which is one of the main rivers in and around Iraq, I believe. We had the Euphrates and the Tigris. This is undoubtedly what has happened in regard to the Isaac sons or Saxons. The I has been dropped and the basic part of the word sac or sac has been retained. Son simply means son of. So the word Saxons means sons of Isaac or sons of Isaac. Later we shall see quotations from reliable sources proving that Saxons derived from the sons of Sac or sons of Isaac, meaning, son Isaac. In the days of the judges, the Ephraimites could not sound the H in the word Shibboleth. During a struggle between Israelitish factions, the inability of the Ephraimites to pronounce the H cost many of them their lives. And this was true. This was, as you see right here, Judges 12 and 6. You can read that. That was a real case because, you got, this is where within tribes you have different slang, you got different terminology, and different, I'll use the word mendable, like, how should I put it? You can bend the word, and Jake does that. Jake's bend words, so you best believe they bend them in Hebrew, and that's where a lot of Gadites and Issacharites, Reubenites, where we talk about they spoke Hebrew, and people are like, what are you talking about? But when you check out their ancient languages, you can see, oh yeah, this is a derivative of Hebrew, this is actual Hebrew, this is a derivative, and then further on down the line, the real, the modern language that they use, that they claim is their ancient tongue, is actually something that they broke off from Hebrew and they completely warped, But you have many, man. When I drove 2 years ago up north, like a fucking, I forgot how long it was, a 12-hour drive, 12-hour drive. And I drove up north where Gad was, and there was a lot of places that was Hebrew, that had Hebrew names. There was a place called Wawa, which that goes, Wawa goes into fishing hook, And I was right by Lake Superior over there, which is the biggest lake of the 5, and you had a lot of different creeks and rivers and lakes over there anyway, smaller ones. That made sense, And there was other Hebrew names that I picked out. So same thing with this. Speaking of fugitive Ephraimites, we read, quote, then said they unto him, say now Shibboleth. And he said, Sibboleth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passages of Jordan. And there fell at the time of the Ephraimites 42,000. Jake was wicked, man. Jake was wicked. That's what the whole book of Judges is the Most High judging us, messing us up, and using these other docile nations to do it. Putting the spirit on them. Many Hebrew-speaking Jews have difficulty pronouncing their H's to this day. Why do we all say Semitic instead of Shemitic? Is it not because the H has been dropped in this word? Now let's go down. Before we pursue further the derivation of the word Sacae, right? We will consider historical evidence proving that the Anglo-Saxons peoples have descended from Shem. We have already noted that License made this confession, quote, I confess that but for the universal tradition which assigns the British, descent to Japhet, which, don't get it twisted, Europe was originally Japhet. Okay? You had Israelites who fought them. You had Edomites who fought them. And they were pushed mainly south during the time of Alexander, during the Edomite Greek Empire. Okay? I should have been rather inclined to attribute to the British Celts a Semitic origin, which the Celts, a lot of those are Israelites, if not all. I can't say all because I don't know, but I know there is a great Hebrew presence there. You know, that's another day for another lesson, right? Both on account of the relics of worship which we find in Britain, and also on account of the language. This is from Our British Ancestors, page 18. Okay. Let's see. License then shows that there are literally thousands of words in the English language which come from the Hebrew language. He says, thus I propose to show in the course of these pages, when we come to the relics of British worship remaining in the country and remaining with little variation or corruption, their aboriginal names, the remarkable similarity between those names and the Hebrew and Chaldee languages. Now again, this is dealing with Britain. Welsh. If you have time, read this. This is good too. Welsh is a whole different tongue than the English. Welsh is a pretty interesting language, a different dialect or language in itself. But I'm not going to read that. Here we go. Strap in. All right. Sacae for the long intro. But this is who were the Sacae. Okay. I'm going to start down here. It might be well to point out here that the Persians spoke of all the people of Scythia as the Sacae or Saka, because the Sacae were a branch of the Scythian people who dwelt nearest to them. Modern research confirms conclusively that the Sacae were a very important branch of the people who were called by the name of Scythians. Before quoting from Sharon Turner, one of the most eminent authorities on the Anglo-Saxons, let us take a biographical glance at this well-known historian, Turner, or Sharon Turner. All right, 1768 to 1847, English historian, was born in Pentonville, London, on the 24th of September 1768. He was educated at a private school kept by Dr. Davis in Pentonville, and was articled to a solicitor in the Temple in 1783. In early boyhood, he had been attracted by a translation of the death song of Ragnar Lodbrok, that was a Viking, and was led by this boyish interest to make, that's what that show Vikings is about, the original, season 1, right? And I believe Ragnar was like a fictionary character, and but in the show he had a brother, Rollo. He was actually, that Esau says he's valid in history. You can actually find him, and he had ties with France after that. Anyway, it says he devoted all his time he could spare from his business to the study of Anglo-Saxon documents in the British Museum. So you best take heed from what he's saying, man, because this is a Edomite who from a very early, basically the time Jake is falling and fell, late 1700s. And he has records to what? He has documents, right, in the British Museum. The material was abundant and had hitherto been neglected. When the first volume of History of England from the earliest times to the Norman Conquest appeared in 1799, it was at once recognized as a work of equal novelty and value. The fourth volume appeared in 1805. Now, again, let's go down here. A very reliable historical account of the Anglo-Saxons by Sharon Turner gives a number of salient points regarding the Anglo-Saxons. It is so important that it is here given verbatim. Quote, the Saxons were a Scythian tribe. And man, the Apostle Tahar, he did that video on the Scythians. That's that spirit, man. That's what really opened me up. And brothers telling, yo, we should get back into history. That's what made me start doing these history videos again. Because that was a very good video, an inspiring video from Apostle Tahar. So that shows you, man, the Saxons were a Scythian tribe, and of the various Scythian nations which have been recorded, the Sacae or Sacae are the people from whom the descent of the Saxons may be inferred with the least violation of probability, meaning, you roll the dice, so to speak, your chances are very good that when you go into history, you're gonna find that these people, the Saxons, they came from, descended from the Scythians. Sacae Suna, or the sons of Sacae, abbreviated into Saxon, which is the same sound as Saxon, seems a reasonable etymology of the word Saxon. The Sacae, who in Latin are called Sacae, were an important branch of the Scythian nation. They were so celebrated that the Persians called all the Scythians by the name Sacae, and Pliny, who mentions this, speaks of them as among the most distinguished people of Scythia. Alright. So, origin of the Saxons. And this is not really a video for the It's not really a video for the origin of the Saxons. Here, I'm gonna read more about the Scythians, Sacae, which the Saxons came from them, as we just read. That's some information there. Hold on one sec. All right, let's check this out. From Herodotus' statement, we can see that the Sacae were actually a Scythian tribe. Herodotus called them Amerindian Scythians. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the Angli or Angles were merely a branch of the Saxons, right? Because you had different names in England. When you can look up ancient England. There's different maps. They'll have like the Jutes or the Welsh or the Angles, and then you have the Anglo-Saxons, right? Just again, Jake going under different names and monikers. Okay. The Anglo-Saxons invaded England in the 4th, 5th, and 6th centuries AD, right? Encyclopedia Britannica, 11th edition. We shall later have occasion to refer to the Sacae or Saxons as we study the Scythian and other tribes in future articles. Here is a final quotation which clearly shows that the Saxons is derived from the sons of Sacae. Milton says that the Saxons were a heathen and barbarous nation. And Jake became that, man. Did we not read in 2nd Ezra 2? Let their name be put out, let them be scattered among the heathen, brought to confusion. Alright? Milton says the Saxons were heathen and a barbarous nation, famous for their robberies and cruelties done to all their neighbors, both by land and sea. It says, quote, they, the Saxons, were a people thought by good writers to be descendants of the Sacae, a kind of Scythians in the north of Asia, thence called Sacasons, or sons of Sacae, who with a flood of other northern nations came into Europe toward the declining of the Roman Empire. History of England, 1835. This is Esau going into that history, man. Bringing it out because he got the records, man. Now check this out. This is from Hurriyet Daily News, or Daily News, June 11, 2015. The Jews and Anatolia. Now in the last lesson, I did a thing on. I referenced Anatolia, right? That region, basically, of Asia Minor, right? So you can look that place up. But here it says, centuries before the Turks arrived, Jews were living in Anatolia. Now, for the record, let's look it up. Hold on. Right, this is Anatolia. Basically, Turkey, but this was ancient Asia Minor. Right? Because Israelites scattered all throughout here, and then they went to here and scattered further, Norway, Northmen, right? So, likely encouraged by King Antiochus III, who had controlled the eastern Mediterranean. In 167 BC, King Antiochus IV, who succeeded him, forbade Jews from practicing their religion. Again, something that the Christians are in understanding is the history, right? Israelites were forbidden to proclaim or to profess to be a Jew and to speak Hebrew and so forth, right? But after a revolt by a provincial priestly family, the Maccabees, which the Maccabees, that was a small sect, there were a few other Israelites who came to them, but a lot of the people, there's a lot of people that died, and there's a lot of people that converted and basically got down with the program and started teaching their children. All right. There's a common theme when I read in the history of Hellenism, that they try to play off how much the Israelites became Hellenized and became Greeks, basically. All right, they actually try to play that part off because it cuts into their whole Gentile thing. It says, the Maccabees who conquered Jerusalem in December 164 BC, the king promised that Jews living in his kingdom would not be harmed and would be permitted to follow their own customs. All right, that's a Hanukkah, going into Hanukkah. The earliest evidence down here for a Jewish presence in Anatolia, which has been dated to the 5th century BC, even before the reign of Antiochus III, interesting, includes the remains of a synagogue in Sardis, near the southwest coast of Anatolia. During the Roman period, they were protected in various provinces in spite of a rebellion, and while it is still a matter of historic research, they seem to have fared pretty well during the Byzantine period. Okay, so that's long before Antiochus III in that area. All right, I wanted to just bring that out. Next, let's go here. This is good. This is where is this from? UCG.org, titled Tracking the Tribes Through Migrations and Maps, posted February 11th, 2007. All right. Like I said, you can, like I always say, you can read, right, the Assyrian captivity and the scattering. I'm going to go straight to the point. 650 BC, Scythian and Cimmerian dispersion. The Scythians and Cimmerians were both groupings of the tribes of Israel. Assyria drafted a number into its armies soon after the captivity. They rose to some power in the empire and finally had an opportunity to help bring down their former oppressor before 600 BC. Quite early, elements of the Cimmerians migrated west across Asia Minor, today's Turkey, conquering or fighting whoever stood in their path until they linked and merged with the Celts. Already in northwest Europe and Britain, the Celts were kinsmen Israelites who had migrated centuries earlier to found trade and mining colonies. Down here it says Alexander the Great gave Greece and Macedonia their day in the sun, but he died early, leaving the 4 divisions of his kingdom to 4 major generals. His push caused many Scythians to migrate into Armenia and north around the Black Sea to Europe. He also chastened ongoing migrations of Cimmerians further into northwest Europe, where they were called Celts by the Greeks and Gauls by the Romans. Some of the highly mobile eastern Scythians, the Saka, right? This is what this lesson is about. The Saka or Sacae moved north and temporarily east, harassing the borders of China, right? The Roman Republic had grown powerful and was often in conflict with various elements of the Gauls, their name for Celts, to their north, but the one power that Rome could never conquer was the Parthian Empire. The Scythian Celtic connection to the lost tribes is well established in our booklet, The United States and Britain in Bible Prophecy, Other Tribal Trails. Now, again, that book, I believe I kind of looked into it years ago. Again, it's Esau trying to push that he is the, there's a movement like that in America that they say that, oh, we're the Israelites because we're the descendants of the ancient British and the Anglo-Saxons, and those were white people. And well, we went into the history of that they were called Dub and Tawny and Swarthy, Svart, all these different names, man. They weren't called Cracker or a Pale or or you know, red face, or no, man, they were called dark skin. All right, brown. All right. It says here, the Parthian Empire is interesting. The Parthian Empire at its apex ruled many peoples, including the Persians, who revolted and seized power in 226. Most historians say the Parthians then simply disappeared from history. They disappeared by migrating north and west, just like the other elements of the Israelite tribes had been doing for centuries. The Roman Empire was also at its zenith, ruling the Gauls in France and the Celtic Britons or Brythons in Britain. Various tribal groupings were populating northern Europe and Scandinavia. The Goths became known as the Goths of the West, or the Visigoths. The Uchi or Guti or Getae also began to be known as the Eastern Goths or Ostrogoths. More history. more history and homework for brothers. And that was it. That was pretty much it. I wanted to bring out the Sacae, or the Saxons. You know, here's a little more history I could read. It says various tribal groups, including the Heruli, right? Vandals, Visigoths, and Ostrogoths overran Rome several times, but with finality in 476. Saxons, the final form of Sacae or Saka, or Scythians, which we read about, right? With the aid of the Angles and Jutes, also invaded Britain. Soon other tribal clans from ancient Israel began to settle in areas that would assume nation status over the next 500 years. Their modern national names include Ireland, Great Britain, and the nations to grow from her main colonies. Like, they're trying to claim that birthright. Okay, so that was pretty much it, man. And like, hold on one sec. Yeah, like I was saying, you can look up how big the Scythians were, man. How big of a people, how important they were. You can just read about them, right? I just wanted to bring out about the Scythians, or the Sacae, or who later became known as the Saxons. You know, skilled in mounted warfare, the Scythians replaced the Cimmerians, which we read about, as the dominant power on the Pontic steppe in the 8th century BC. See? In the 7th century BC, the Scythians crossed the Caucasus Mountains and frequently raided West Asia along with the Cimmerians. Right, look at this part right here. In the late 2nd century BC, the capital of the largely Hellenized Scythians at Scythian Neapolis in the Crimea was captured by Mithridates VI. So they were Hellenized as well. Right? So there's a lot of history, you know. All right, so with that, I hope you're edified. As always, Kal Halayim, all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai, Ba'Hashem Racha HaKodash, for letting me do this lesson and bring this information out. And double honors unto the apostles of GMS who rule well, and salutations and blessings to you elect.